In a society increasingly fixated on external validation, where social media metrics, professional titles, and material wealth define one's worth, the timeless wisdom of ancient philosophers such as Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Diogenes the Cynic provides a profound counterpoint. These thinkers, spanning diverse eras and cultures, identified a common human tendency, an excessive preoccupation with the opinions of others. As Epictetus eloquently stated, we must occasionally endure being laughed at and introspect deeply to discover our true selves. Marcus Aurelius further illuminated this flaw, noting, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This article delves into the psychological and philosophical implications of this obsession with external approval, arguing that overcoming the fear of ridicule, rejection, and disapproval is a cornerstone of living an authentic and fulfilling life. By embracing practices that challenge societal norms and cultivating indifference to external judgment, we can break free from the shackles of conformity and forge a deeper connection with our inner selves, ultimately achieving a state of psychological freedom and personal integrity. In the modern Western world, the pursuit of social validation has become a cultural obsession, shaping identities and driving behavior. Success is frequently measured by external markers: a high-status job, a luxurious car, a meticulously curated social media profile, or the admiration of peers. This relentless focus on outward achievement, however, exacts a significant toll on our psychological well-being. Carl Jung, in his seminal work Psychology and Religion, cautioned that an overemphasis on external success neglects the inner self, creating a profound imbalance within the psyche. Jung described the inner man as a persistent voice that demands acknowledgement, regardless of one's external accomplishments. When this voice is ignored, it becomes a source of inexplicable misfortune and uncomprehended unhappiness, even in the midst of apparent prosperity. Jung's insight underscores a critical truth. External validation is inherently transient and insufficient for genuine fulfillment. A person may achieve societal ideals, wealth, physical attractiveness, social status, yet remain haunted by a sense of emptiness if their inner psyche is neglected. This disconnect, which Jung termed the sickness of Western man, arises from an externalization of life, where individuals seek meaning in the approval of others rather than within themselves. The result is a society of individuals stunted in their personal growth, trapped in a perpetual cycle of chasing something more and better that remains perpetually out of reach, like a mirage in a desert of unfulfilled desires. The 16th century philosopher Michel de Montaigne echoed this critique in his essay On Vanity, lamenting the human tendency to live by reference to others. He argued that this orientation robs us of what is truly valuable, our authentic selves, in favor of conforming to public opinion. Montaigne's observation remains strikingly relevant in today's world, where societal pressures to adhere to idealized standards of success and appearance often overshadow personal truth. The pursuit of external validation, while socially rewarded, leaves individuals vulnerable to psychological distress as they sacrifice their inner development for the fleeting approval of others. This creates a life where external achievements are prioritized over internal growth, leading to a hollow existence devoid of true contentment. Conformity, driven by the fear of ridicule, rejection, and disapproval, is a powerful force that shapes behavior and stifles individuality. To conform is to align one's actions, appearance, and beliefs with societal expectations, often at the expense of personal authenticity. The fear of standing out, of being mocked or ostracized, keeps many tethered to a life that does not reflect their true desires or potential. As Montaigne noted, we care less about the real truth of our inner selves than about how we are known to the public. This prioritization of external perception over internal truth perpetuates a cycle of inauthenticity, where individuals live not for themselves, but for the approval of others, constantly adjusting their behavior to fit within the boundaries of social acceptability. The psychological toll of this conformity is profound and multifaceted. When we suppress our true selves to avoid ridicule, we engage in a form of self-betrayal that erodes self-esteem and fosters anxiety. This suppression creates a state of cognitive dissonance, where our actions conflict with our inner values, leading to internal conflict and discomfort. Over time, this dissonance can manifest as feelings of emptiness, disconnection, or even clinical depression, as the inner self, neglected and unheard, rebels against the externalized life. The constant effort to maintain a socially acceptable facade requires significant emotional energy, leaving individuals exhausted and unfulfilled, yearning for a sense of purpose that remains elusive. Jung's analysis further illuminates this cost. He argued that the inner man cannot be silenced by external achievements. No matter how grand, when its needs are ignored, it becomes a source of suffering, manifesting as a vague sense of unease, a persistent feeling of dissatisfaction, or a profound sense of unfulfillment. This suffering is particularly insidious because it is often misunderstood. Individuals may attribute their discontent to external circumstances, such as a lack of wealth or status, unaware that the true source lies within their neglected psyche. As Jung wrote, no one can understand why he should suffer from himself. Yet this internal conflict is the root of much modern psychological malaise, a silent epidemic that plagues those who prioritize external validation over inner growth. If the sickness of Western man lies in an excessive orientation toward external validation, the cure lies in embracing nonconformity and cultivating indifference to the opinions of others. This requires a deliberate and courageous shift away from the pursuit of social approval and toward a life that prioritizes inner harmony, authenticity, and self-discovery. The ancient Stoics and Cynics, such as Cato and Diogenes, offer powerful examples of how to achieve this liberation through practices that challenge societal norms and desensitize us to ridicule, thereby fostering resilience and inner strength. Cato, a Roman senator and Stoic philosopher of the 1st century BC, deliberately defied societal expectations by dressing in ways that flouted contemporary fashion trends. As William Irvine explains in A Guide to the Good Life, the ancient art of Stoic joy, Cato's actions were not driven by a desire for attention or vainglory, but by a disciplined effort to train himself to disregard others' disdain. By exposing himself to ridicule, Cato diminished its power over him, freeing himself from the need for external validation and allowing him to focus on what was truly shameful, moral failings, rather than what society deemed unacceptable, such as unconventional attire. Diogenes the Cynic, living in the 4th century BC, took this practice to an extreme, engaging in behaviors that deliberately provoked mockery and disapproval. From walking backward into theaters to living in a barrel and openly challenging social norms, Diogenes sought to master his fear of disapproval through radical acts of nonconformity. His actions were not mere provocations but a disciplined effort to achieve inner freedom, a state where the opinions of others held no sway over his choices. As he famously remarked, "Just as they pay no heed to the donkeys, I pay none to them." Diogenes' indifference to others' opinions allowed him to live authentically, unburdened by the expectations of society, and to dedicate his life to the mastery of body and mind. This practice of voluntary exposure to ridicule aligns closely with modern psychological principles, particularly exposure therapy, which posits that confronting fears directly reduces their hold over us. By intentionally engaging in nonconformist behaviors, whether dressing unconventionally, expressing unpopular opinions, or defying social expectations, we can desensitize ourselves to the sting of disapproval. Over time, the fear of ridicule loses its power, and we become free to live according to our own values, unencumbered by the need to please others. This process is not about reckless rebellion, but about cultivating a disciplined indifference that allows us to prioritize our inner truth over external judgment. The Stoics and Cynics offer a practical blueprint for cultivating indifference to external judgment, but this practice requires a fundamental shift in mindset. Rather than viewing ridicule as a threat to our self-worth, we can approach it as an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. Arthur Schopenhauer, in his work Counsels and Maxims, advised treating instances of judgment or mockery as data points in the study of human nature. By adopting the perspective of a mineralogist observing a specimen, we can detach ourselves from the emotional impact of criticism and view it as a neutral phenomenon. This reframing transforms ridicule from a personal attack into a learning experience, reducing its ability to wound us and allowing us to approach it with curiosity rather than fear. Epictetus further reinforced this mindset, questioning the value of seeking approval from those we would otherwise dismiss as irrational or misguided. Who are these people whose admiration you seek? Aren't they the ones you are used to describing as mad? He asked. By recognizing that the harshest critics are often those least worthy of our attention, individuals consumed by their own insecurities or societal pressures, we can diminish their influence over our self-perception. This perspective empowers us to prioritize our own judgment over that of others, aligning our actions with our inner truth rather than external expectations. The practice of indifference also involves reframing the purpose of nonconformist actions. As Irvine notes, the goal is not to provoke or annoy others, but to deepen our understanding of ourselves and human nature. When we act in ways that elicit disapproval, we are not merely defying norms, but engaging in a form of psychological observation, as Nietzsche described. This mindset allows us to approach ridicule with a sense of purpose, viewing it as a tool for self-discovery rather than a source of shame. By embracing this perspective, we can transform potentially painful experiences into opportunities for growth, strengthening our resilience and deepening our connection to our authentic selves. The ultimate reward of overcoming the fear of ridicule is the freedom to live authentically, a state where our actions, values, and goals align with our true nature rather than external ideals. When we no longer feel compelled to conform to societal expectations, we can heed the call of our inner selves, as Jung advocated, and pursue a life that reflects our deepest desires and principles. This authenticity involves a courageous commitment to self-discovery, where we prioritize our inner truth over the fleeting approval of others, even at the cost of social acceptance. Diogenes exemplified this freedom in its purest form. Unconstrained by social norms, he dedicated his life to the mastery of body and mind, living with a simplicity and integrity that earned him the admiration of figures like Alexander the Great and Epictetus. His example demonstrates that living authentically does not necessarily lead to universal condemnation. Rather, it can inspire respect from those who value genuine character over superficial success. Diogenes' indifference to external judgment allowed him to live a life of unparalleled freedom, unburdened by the expectations of others and guided solely by his own principles. Miguel de Unamuno, in The Tragic Sense of Life, described the ability to face ridicule as the greatest height of heroism. This heroism lies not in grand, theatrical gestures, but in the quiet, steadfast courage to be true to oneself, even when it invites mockery or disapproval. By embracing this courage, we break free from the sickness of Western man and open ourselves to a life of greater meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. This freedom is not about rejecting society altogether, but about finding a balance where we can engage with the world without being defined by its judgments. Achieving this freedom requires ongoing self-reflection, a process of introspection that allows us to understand who we are, independent of external influences. To live authentically, we must first examine our values, desires, and fears, questioning how much of our behavior is driven by the need for approval. Epictetus's advice to give yourself a good shaking to find out who you really are underscores the importance of this introspective practice. By regularly assessing our motivations, we can identify areas where we are living inauthentically and take steps to realign our actions with our inner truth, ensuring that our choices reflect our genuine selves rather than societal pressures. Self-reflection also helps us distinguish between constructive criticism and baseless ridicule. While the former can offer valuable insights for personal growth, the latter often reflects the insecurities or biases of the critic rather than any truth about ourselves. By cultivating this discernment, we can filter out meaningless judgment and focus on feedback that supports our development, thereby strengthening our resilience and self-awareness. This process of introspection is not a one-time event, but a lifelong practice, requiring us to continually revisit and refine our understanding of ourselves in the face of changing circumstances and societal pressures. Ridicule is not merely a personal experience, but a social phenomenon with complex dynamics that reveal much about human behavior. Those who mock or criticize often do so to reinforce their own status within a group, to deflect attention from their own shortcomings, or to assert dominance. As Epictetus noted, the loudest critics are often those consumed by their own psychological turmoil, projecting their insecurities or self-hatred onto others. Understanding this dynamic can help us depersonalize ridicule, recognizing it as a reflection of the critic's state rather than our own worth, and thereby reducing its emotional impact. Moreover, ridicule often serves as a mechanism of social control, discouraging individuals from deviating from established norms. By conforming, we avoid the discomfort of disapproval, but we also sacrifice our individuality and autonomy. The practice of nonconformity, as exemplified by Cato and Diogenes, challenges this control, asserting the right to define one's own path. This defiance not only liberates the individual, but also disrupts the broader system of conformity, encouraging others to question societal expectations and explore their own authenticity. By embracing nonconformity, we contribute to a cultural shift that values individuality over blind adherence to norms. The teachings of the Stoics and Cynics are strikingly relevant in today's world, where social media platforms like Instagram and X amplify the pressure to conform. These platforms reward external validation through likes, followers, and comments, creating a culture where individuals measure their worth by their online persona rather than their inner character. This environment exacerbates the sickness of Western man, as people prioritize curated images and social approval over authenticity, often at the expense of their mental health and personal growth. Yet, the ancient practice of embracing ridicule offers a powerful counterpoint to this modern malaise. By deliberately stepping outside the bounds of social media norms, posting unfiltered thoughts, rejecting curated aesthetics, or challenging popular opinions, we can apply the Stoic and Cynic principles to the digital age. This act of defiance, though potentially uncomfortable, fosters resilience and authenticity, allowing us to reclaim our sense of self from the tyranny of external validation. By modeling nonconformity in the digital realm, we can inspire others to prioritize their inner truth over the superficial metrics of social media success. To embark on the path of nonconformity and indifference to ridicule, we must start with small, intentional steps. Begin by identifying areas of your life where you feel pressured to conform, whether in your appearance, career choices, social interactions, or online presence. Experiment with small acts of nonconformity, wearing unconventional clothing, expressing an unpopular opinion, or prioritizing personal goals over societal expectations. Reflect on the reactions you receive and use them as opportunities for self-discovery, as Schopenhauer advised, treating them as data points in your study of human nature. Over time, these small acts build resilience, gradually reducing the emotional impact of disapproval. As you grow more comfortable with ridicule, you will find it easier to live authentically, guided by your inner values rather than external pressures. This journey is not about rejecting society altogether, but about finding a balance where you can engage with the world without being defined by its judgments. It requires patience, persistence, and a commitment to self-discovery. But the rewards, a life of authenticity, freedom, and fulfillment, are profound. The fear of ridicule and the pursuit of external validation are pervasive forces that tether us to inauthentic lives, preventing us from realizing our full potential. By drawing on the timeless wisdom of philosophers like Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Carl Jung, and Diogenes the Cynic, we can break free from these constraints and cultivate a life of authenticity and fulfillment. The practice of embracing nonconformity, as exemplified by Cato and Diogenes, teaches us that ridicule is not a threat, but an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. By facing disapproval head-on, we diminish its power and open ourselves to the freedom of living true to our inner selves. As Miguel de Unamuno reminds us, the ability to face ridicule is a form of heroism, one that leads not to external accolades, but to the profound reward of self-liberation. In a world that demands conformity at every turn, the greatest act of courage is to be unapologetically ourselves, embracing our unique truth and living a life that reflects our deepest values.